This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your source for the latest Iowa ag news headlines right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, and Andy Peterson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Today is Tuesday, the 15th of July, 2025. So glad you could join us here today. Coming up a little later on in the program, we're going to talk with Kenan Layden of agmarket.net to find out how the market's closed. But right now, we're going to hear from National Pork Producers Council Director of Animal Health, Dr. Anna Forseth. She's going to talk to us about some of the things that they're working on and what they're paying attention to here as we keep moving through the 2025 season. Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and talking right now with Dr. Anna Forseth. She is the Director of Animal Health with NPPC. Dr. Forseth, thanks so much for joining us.
No, you bet. Thanks for the invite.
All right, so obviously we're talking a lot about animal health at an event like this, and there's a lot of things that are out there that we're having to pay attention to. Let's start with H5N1. I mean, I know obviously it used to be classified as the bird flu, but jumped some species barriers and stuff like that. What is this going to mean for the pork industry? What are you guys kind of keeping an eye on?
Yeah, great question. Very timely, especially for your audience here in Iowa. You guys have been hearing a lot about H5N1, the poultry sector, and then unfortunately, more recently in the dairy sector. In the swine industry, we deal with influenza viruses, endemic swine-adapted strains, and we have for decades. And so influenza in general, not new to the swine industry, but this strain would be. And we've done some limited lab-based studies to show that swine are susceptible. So with all that said, we have been watching what's going on in both the dairy and the poultry sectors, recognizing that it could be something that we deal with in the swine industry. We also recognize that the bandwidth for the responders, the regulatory officials, both at the state and the federal level, they don't have a lot of time to focus any efforts or attention on the swine sector. And so recently we pulled together a group of state veterinarians, industry personnel, including a producer, to talk about what a potential response could look like that industry might be okay with. You know that the response in the poultry sector is one that it's a foreign disease. Let's go in, depopulate, and eradicate the virus. The response in the dairy sector is a little different. And so what would a response, or what should a response look like from our perspective, but also getting kind of that sign off from the regulatory side. So we put a guidance response plan together. We ran it by several different audiences for input and are in conversation with USDA colleagues about how it might match up with what they're thinking.
So maybe give us a 30,000-foot view of what that would look like if for some reason it would be found in a population.
Yeah, so the goal would be for the response to be more similar to the dairy sector than the poultry sector, right? It is a foreign disease in poultry, but it's not in dairy. It would be considered a foreign disease in swine. And so we also prioritize during this process business continuity. And we learned lessons during COVID that it's hard to keep animals on a farm, especially animals on a sow farm. So pigs that need to be weaned, say that sow farm is positive for H5N1. What opportunities might there be to allow for those movements to continue, but identify sidebars to be placed on those animals, biosecurity recommendations, movement restrictions, not limitations, but restrictions, say they can only go to certain places, to try to prevent further spread, but still allow for animals to move off of a farm.
So in comparison to, I know we had always talked about speculation of if African swine fever were to hit, it was going to be a massive just stop everything, a little bit more limited if it was going to be an H5N1 situation.
Yeah, we'd hope that it's not a mandatory nationwide movement standstill. Instead, it's much more targeted. Quarantines can still be placed, but permitted movements would be allowed. That's the goal.
Okay. Other animal situations, we talk a lot about New World screwworm right now. Of course, that's been affecting the cattle industry, but of course it can affect any mammals, humans included. From the pork perspective, what are you looking at there?
Yeah, another great question, and unfortunately just another thing to add to the list of diseases. pest to watch. But as you said, it's making its northward movement now into Mexico. The only way to combat this particular disease is through sterile flies. And so a big focus, especially from the policy side, is trying to secure the funding and the production of those sterile flies, recognizing, as you said, that while the focus is on cattle, because that's a lot of what the cases have been in Mexico, cattle cases, swine are susceptible. And we definitely see flies in swine barns. And so it would be a challenging pest and disease to try to control and manage. And again, the focus right now is how can we continue to maintain or sustain that production of those sterile flies, because that's really our silver bullet, so to speak, with this disease.
And how hard is it to worry about or maybe think about containment on something like that? Because obviously, you can shut the border down from shipments going across, but wild animals don't care about a border.
Yeah, no, wild animals is a big concern. Just as you said, they don't respect the border. They're susceptible too. And then just the fly in general. Fly doesn't respect the border either, right? And there's plenty of ways that it can cross. And so, there's just a lot of different aspects to this challenge that make it quite difficult. And so focusing on that feral fly production is really where we're at right now.
Okay, so we talked about a couple of challenges. Well, let's talk about maybe some of the proactive things that NPPC is working on with animal health. Maybe give us some rundowns on that.
Yeah, so last year at this time, we were talking a lot about African swine fever still, rightfully so. Continue to have our eyes set on African swine fever along with the other two foreign swine diseases, foot and mouth disease, classical swine fever. But we got to a point where we decided that it was time to reevaluate those priorities and make sure that we were still focusing on the right things when it comes to preparedness and planning for African swine fever. And the first thought was maybe we expand the focus to include the other two foreign swine diseases. And then as we start hearing from and talking to more producers, I think the realization was foreign disease is still of interest, is still a focus and a concern, but boy, is there enough going on domestically with endemic diseases that really could warrant our attention from the national industry's perspective. And so what we've decided to do is do an outreach campaign of sorts with producers, and this will go on for the next couple of months, with an effort to really try to understand the SLAT level swine health concerns or challenges, swine health challenges, and then bring that feedback together with a small kind of focus group and redefine or establish those priorities. So I don't expect that we don't have foreign swine disease on that list of priorities, but I do expect that we have some additional domestic opportunities to try to combat some of the issues that producers are facing on a daily basis.
Are there other concerns that NPPC has, as far as things going on with animal health in general? I mean, is there any policy things that we're worried about, any asks and, farm bills being talked about? I mean, what kind of things are we looking at there?
Yeah, I'd say there's probably two. You mentioned the farm bill, right? We're still working through that process. And a big focus for us is our swine health priorities, the three-legged stool, the stockpile, the funding for the non-lab, the NAD prep program, to name a few. And then the U.S. SHIP program is another thing that I believe we've talked about in the past. And that program, the proposed rule was open for public comment. And we really would like to see that moved through the system to a fully codified USDA program. And so that's something else that on the policy side, we're really focusing on and advocating for right now.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot of information. Anything that our Iowa producers really need to know as we wrap up today?
I think, again, just going back to the National Swine Health Strategy, I'm here to serve your producers from the health perspective. And right now, we have an idea of what the priorities are, but the best thing to do is to hear from them. So anybody who's listening who might not be aware of this. Reach out to your Iowa Association, reach out to NPPC, Pork Board, and just get your input, your voices heard. I'll also add that after we compile this information and reestablish those priorities, we're going to share this much more broadly so that it's not just the two national industry organizations focusing on this, but we hope that the academic institutions that do work in the swine health space also hear this, and USDA ARS, so that everybody collectively that is working on swine health is prioritizing what the producer is interested in.
All right, well, Dr. Anna Forseth has been our guest here. Doctor, if folks want to learn more about what NPPC is doing or get more of that information, where do they go?
You bet. Website's probably the best place to go, nppc.org.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Forseth.
Thank you. Have a good day.
That again was Dr. Anna Forseth of the National Pork Producers Council. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association, and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, we'll talk with Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. We're back on Ag Matters PM here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network and talking now with Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. And Kenan, what did we see coming out of that grain trade today?
Yeah, it was an interesting grain trade today. Things were moving lower overnight, and then corn was able to hang on throughout the day and close above that 418 level. A lot of people who look at technicals were looking at the gap on the chart that a lot of people, up in the 430s are kind of hoping that we get back to here. And corn was able to have a good close. Beans continued to sell throughout the day, and wheat was softer today. Also, Nopa soybean oil crush came in. Crush is going along great. Higher stocks, soybean oil was up on the day along with canola. So it was a better day than corn yesterday and today than last week. So we'll take it.
And what's been driving that positivity in the corn markets here?
Some of it you could say is it almost seems like a technical rally more than a fundamental rally, because the conditions overnight, corn is at a 9-year high with 74% good to excellent. The bean and wheat ratings might have been something that dinged that market. They were both raised. I guess in the spring wheat I look at up here, and soybean was raised about 4 percentage points from 66 to 70, I think. So crop is still looking good weather. There's some showers pushing in, so fundamentally it's still looking like a big crop. But we get to a certain point on the charts, you'll see people draw channels, and the long-term downtrend, and we're kind of right at the bottom of it. So a little bounce here off of that, I would chalk it more up to technicals than anything largely fundamental.
All right, and switching gears over to the livestock side of things, how did those cattle and hogs fare today?
Yeah, cattle, had a bounce off of that big sell-off yesterday. Feeder cattle index was higher. Cash values continue to be fairly strong, and it's one thing that you sound like a broken record, but as long as cash continues to stay strong and move higher, the discount in those cattle boards to the cash market, they kind of have to stay locked in step with them. So anytime they try to sell off, they can't get too far away from cash. And then, hogs, they were mixed today. Some of the front months were higher, back months were a little bit lower. And, technically they've sold off pretty hard, and not a good look in the hogs. Some of the cutout values are lower than they were. Which is the case in cattle also, but hopefully can find some technical footing here and move higher.
All right. Well, if folks want to talk about some market strategies or look at what they should be thinking about, what's the best way for them to get in touch with the folks at agmarket.net?
Yeah, check us out on the web at agmarket.net and check out some of the market information we put out.
All right, Kenan Layden's been with us here today on Ag Matters PM. Kenan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Dustin.
That again was Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the closing numbers on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network market screen. September corn up 1 1/4 at the close, 401 1/4. August beans down 6 at 9.95 even. Soybean meal down $2.40 at 265.30. Soy oil up 39 cents at 54.56. Chicago wheat down 3 1/2 at 5.38 even. Kansas winter wheat up 3/4 cent at 5.23 3/4. Spring wheat out of Kansas 6 cents lower at 5.81 even. Minneapolis spring wheat down 2 1/2 cents at 6.01 1/4. Oats down a penny at 3.66 even. On the Merck live cattle closed up 305 at 222.40. Feeders were up $2.80 at 322.27. Lean hogs up 70 cents at 103.92. Pork cutouts unchanged at 110.52. Class 3 milk up 2 cents at 17.39. And that's with a check of our closing market recap, and that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com, as well as follow us on Facebook, X, and on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified each time we put out a new video project. Also, don't forget you can find replays of Iowa Ag Matters PM, also our Weekend Ag Matters program, our market podcasts that come out 3 times a day as well, free of charge, and all of our content online, iowaagnet.com under the podcast tab, or you can subscribe through your favorite provider and get them delivered right to your mobile device free of charge every day. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Mark Magnuson, Andy Peterson, Ashton Jolly, and Riley Smith, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.